Caseus. Jedi Exile. Chapter 4. The sun had just set as Caseus rode his speeder in the direction of the weather station. Before long, he had arrived on the outskirts of an abandoned research outpost. A few small run-down buildings bordered a 2-floor weather station with a broken satellite dish hanging from the rooftop. Hopping out of the speeder, Caseus kept his cloak up and looked through his macro binoculars. Through the windows, he saw Zolan and his men laughing and drinking, celebrating the carnage they just caused. Outside, caged in a metal pen, he saw a tied-up Cathhound gnawing at its chain trying to free itself. Caseus would make sure their celebration was short-lived. But he had to play it smart. How would Dravok handle something like this? As Caseus sat behind cover, he saw a large power generator supplying electricity and light to their hideout. That was it. Cover of darkness. Carefully, he aimed Sabo's rifle at the generator and blasted it, cutting off power to the entire area. From the station, he heard cries of anger and confusion. Looking through his binoculars, he saw 2 of Zolan's men go outside with small torch lamps to check on the generator.
What the hell happened? Must have blown a fuse or something.
One of them got close to the generator and looked closely before a slug from Sabo's rifle lodged into his neck, bringing him to the ground in a gurgling heap. Before the other could respond, Caseus blasted his foot, causing him to fire off his blaster in random directions before being struck through the chest. Several more ran outside and flashed lights onto their dead comrades and out to where the shots came from, but saw nothing but darkness.
Get inside. Barricade the doors and board up the windows.
Zolan and the remaining 5 men he had with him quickly ran into the station and shoved heavy furniture and metal panels against the door and the windows before sitting down at small gaps, aiming their rifles outside. Caseus wasn't anywhere near where they were aiming. He sat on top of the station. They were scared. He could sense it. But not scared enough. It was time for them to feel true terror. Picking up a few loose bolts and pebbles, Caseus carefully dropped them around the rooftop in different spots, making small clanging noises all around, causing the Cathhound outside to snarl and bark. Inside, Zolan aimed his blaster all around.
He's on the roof!
Blasting upwards, Zolan and his men fired relentlessly until the roof was riddled with hundreds of holes.
Did we get him?
Zolan pushed one of his men to the doorway with a small lamp as he shakily walked outside, aiming his blaster in every direction before turning around. Before he could say a word, a metal slug ripped through his chest, bringing him to the ground as the others panicked and fired in every direction. Zolan breathed heavily and held his blaster in a tight grip. They were in complete darkness now. One of his crooks from the other day slowly backed up towards the wall in the corner and lit his small torch lamp, illuminating the hooded face of Caseus right behind him. As he screamed in terror, Caseus shot him through his head and dodged behind a metal table as the others fired at him.
Where is he? Shoot him!
Caseus kicked the table forward, knocking Zolan against the wall before jumping to his feet and smashing the stock of his rifle into the face of another, causing the back of his head to smash into the metal wall. The remaining 2 fired at Caseus, who used his cloak to sweep a cloud of dust and dirt into the air, blinding them as he used his rifle like a bat and cracked them both across the back of their heads before finishing them both off with 2 final shots to the back. Zolan struggled as he was pinned to the wall by the table, and Caseus slowly walked over.
Who are you?
Caseus grabbed Zolan and yanked him free before throwing him to the ground. As Zolan reached for his blaster, Caseus used the butt of his rifle and smashed his hand, breaking every bone. Zolan crawled away, trying to reach his blaster, as Caseus kicked it away from him and knelt down to face the helpless man. Do you know what you did?
What did I do?
Caseus kicked him in his jaw, knocking out several of his teeth before turning his face to look at him. Don't play dumb. It won't help you. Reaching to his belt, Caseus pulled out his lightsaber and ignited the green blade.
You're a Jedi!
Caseus pointed the blade at his throat. You won't be causing anyone any problems anymore.
Are you going to kill me?
Jedi don't kill. Have you been awake the past 10 minutes, Zolan? I think we passed that bar a while back. Zolan breathed heavily and began to cry as Caseus rolled his eyes and lowered his saber. No, I'm not going to kill you. Zolan breathed a sigh of relief and carefully sat up, holding his crushed hand as Caseus walked to the cage holding the hound and sliced it open as Zolan's eyes grew wide. I don't know if your pet will be so forgiving, though. Caseus cut the creature free as it rushed towards Zolan, who screamed in terror as the calf hound began to chomp down on him. Putting his saber away, Caseus walked back to the speeder and hopped inside, before speeding back to Sabo's farm. When he arrived, Sabo was asleep in a tent, as Caseus hopped out and placed his rifle beside him. Caseus? Caseus turned and saw Kala sitting up, holding a sleeping Liara in her arms. You're back. What happened? Caseus got down on one knee and looked into her eyes. They won't be coming back. What did you do? I did what had to be done. Kala looked at him with fear. You killed them? Caseus stayed silent and got up before going over to a separate tent and lying down. The morning came, and Caseus was awakened by a splash of cold water on his face. Before he could do anything, Sabo grabbed him by his collar and hoisted him up.
Are you dense, boy?
Caseus pushed away from Sabo. What?
You killed them. You actually killed them.
They got what they deserved. Sabo smacked Caseus on the side of his head.
Do you know what could happen now? If anyone finds out, they're going to start asking questions. They're going to put the pieces together and find out who you are.
They won't know anything unless someone tells them. Who's going to tell them, Sabo?
You? After what I did for you, you're going to sell me out?
Don't act like you killed them for me, boy. You were looking for any excuse to let out your anger. Well, you certainly did. You killed them. Are you happy?
Caseus glared at Sabo. You know what? I am. I'm glad they're dead. They got what they had coming to them.
And now what? What changes for you, Caseus? Nothing. You're still the same boy I caught eating from the slop last week. You're right back where you started.
Caseus stared at Sabo, the two glaring at each other. I thought you'd be more appreciative.
Look at yourself, son. Do you think this is moving on? Is this living a life worthy of your master's memory? Do you think she would approve of what you did? Would she be proud to see you hunting down common thugs?
Caseus closed his eyes and gritted his teeth, turning away from Sabo. No.
You have to think, Caseus. If you answer every act of violence with revenge, eventually it will come back around. There aren't many Jedi left. Do you want this to be their legacy?
Caseus felt awful. Sabo was right. He let his anger take him again. It was too much to control. I'm sorry, Sabo.
Don't apologize to me, Caseus. Apologize to Kala. She told me everything. She can hardly believe you did something like that.
Is she here?
She's feeding the animals right now. Better make your peace with her.
Caseus sighed and walked over to Kala, who sat giving feed to the birds. Kala? Kala kept silent, not looking at him. Kala, I need to explain. Explain what? How you killed those crooks? I don't need the details, Caseus. Kala, I need to tell you. Tell me what? Caseus sighed and slowly raised his hand, lifting the bag of birdseed from her hand with the force. Kala sat in stunned silence and slowly turned to Caseus. You're one of them. Caseus looked down and slowly nodded. I'm sorry I kept it from you. I had to. After everything that's happened, it's not safe for me to reveal myself. Kala stepped away from Caseus and picked up Liara. I want you to stay away from me. And my daughter. Kala, I would never stay away. I won't turn you in. But if you come anywhere near my family, I'll have the Empire here in no time. You Jedi bring nothing but trouble. And I won't have my daughter get caught up in it. Cassius looked at her sadly and nodded. Okay. Kala grabbed Liara and went to her speeder before driving away, as Liara looked back at Cassius and waved. Cassius fell to his knees. She was right. He only brought trouble. As he sat, a hand rested on his shoulder.
You can't blame her, son. She shares most people's opinion on your kind these days.
Sabo. What can I do?
What you should have done before. Set aside your life as a Jedi. There's nothing down that path for you anymore. Learn to let go of the past.
Looking up, Cassius stood and walked over to the damaged farmhouse. You're right. I'm not a Jedi anymore. I can't be. The only way I'll be able to keep others safe is by letting go. Cassius took his saber from his belt and went over to the barn. Shifting through the wreckage, he grabbed an old metal box with a lock on it and placed his lightsaber inside, latching it up. This stays in here. Out of sight. Out of my life.
You're making the right choice, Cassius. It's for the best. Not just for everyone else, but for you.
Cassius nodded and looked around at the burned walls and ceiling.
I assume you're leaving now?
Cassius stared at Sabo. Well, I can't just leave you to fix this place by yourself. Sabo smiled.
So you'll stay then?
He nodded. As long as you need me.